Morning. I'll call the Board Investment Committee meeting to order. Steve, would you take the roll, please, and then read the statement into the record for us, please?
Yeah.
Thank
Good
you.
morning. For the Director of Finance, Ms. Peral.
Present.
Mr. Tang.
Here.
Ms. Yamamoto.
Here.
Ms. Bradford.
Here.
Ms. Hendricks.
Here.
Mr. Gunning.
Here.
For the State Treasurer, Mr. Henning.
Here.
For the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Mr. Patterson.
Here.
Mr. Juarez.
Here.
All right, Chairman Keeley, you have a quorum. So the CalSTRS board meetings are live web streamed, video archived, and available to the public on calstrs.com. Individuals who wish to address the board should wait for the 10-minute public comment period at the end of the agenda item the speaker wishes to address. For comments not pertaining to the specific agenda item, there will be an opportunity for additional statements at the beginning or end of the open session. Each speaker is allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to comment. However, if there is not enough time, each speaker will, the timing will be at the discretion of the chair. Please be advised that while criticism is protected, abusive language or other disruptive behavior that goes beyond protected speech and impedes the meeting's progress may result in the termination of further comment and or removal if that behavior continues. To protect the privacy of speakers under the age of 18 who wish to address the board, only their first name and affiliated organization may be provided, but other personal identifying information such as their last name, age, or school may not be shared. And since the September Teachers Retirement Board meeting, CalSTRS has received 244 communications from members and non-members requesting CalSTRS divest from Tesla, 154 communications from the CalSTRS Divest campaign urging CalSTRS to initiate a review process of investments related to the geopolitical conflict in Gaza. Companies included Lockheed Martin, Palantir Technologies, Elbit Systems, and Caterpillar Inc., as well as Israeli banks and bonds. And they have received 2 emails related to CalSTRS investment in BC Partners and its connection to issues of media freedom in Serbia, encouraging CalSTRS to engage with BC Partners on various governance issues. There was 1 email from a member regarding the reputation of private equity for exploiting teacher funds. And finally, 1 email from a non-member requesting CalSTRS divest from RCI Hospitality Holdings.
Thank you, Steve. So we're going to entertain a motion to approve today's agenda with some flexibility. Moved by Ken, seconded by Karen. Without objection, the agenda has been approved with some flexibility. Samantha, how many public comments do we have today?
We're at 37 public comments.
Okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to take the 37 public comments, starting with those that are in person first, followed by members of the public that are calling in. Steve, thank you for reading that into the record. So it's 1 minute each. We ask that you be respectful. I have a pretty wide range and pretty liberal in terms of my acceptance of what would be acceptable in the room. But if you cross the line, we will let you know and we'll take a break. So 37 public comments. We'll start with public people in person, followed by phone calls. This is an opportunity for us to hear from you. We won't engage in conversations, dialogue, or ask you specific questions. This is an opportunity for us to hear from the public your views on issues that are of importance to you and to us. After public comments, we'll take a 5-minute break. Samantha, can you start calling the names, please?
Yes.
Thank you, Samantha.
So I'm going to call the first person and then also call somebody to queue behind them for the in-person comments. Our first speaker will be Dr. Pattinson, followed by Ruth.
Thank you. I'm here representing Dr. Thomas Patterson, representing 1,500 signatures from defund Tesla, Yola County. Thank you for hearing me. Tesla is an outlier in corporate governance. The company is basically a mean company that is being run solely for the benefit of Elon Musk. He's now looking at, even with mediocre performance, up to $1 trillion, well, with good performance, $1 trillion, but mediocre performance, $20 to $40 billion. And the net earnings of Tesla is projected to be around that, lifetime earnings. So he's taking the whole amount of money. Shareholders are getting nothing. The employees get $55,000 a month. They can't afford to have children, so we don't have children for our teachers to educate. So there's a lot of headwinds in the governments. There's a lot of promises that Musk has made that hasn't been kept. So I urge, like CalPERS did, as a result of some of our testimony,
Thank you
for
for your
STRS to refer this to their staff for better
Thank you for your
analysis.
comment. Our next speaker will be Ruth, followed by Edward.
Good morning. I am Ruth Rudetsky, CalSTRS member. The CalPERS board honored their fiduciary duty and authorized the company's specific assessment of Tesla at their September board meeting. Why hasn't CalSTRS? There is no better argument for taking a close look at Tesla now than that the Tesla board just authorized a $1 trillion compensation package to an erratic part-time CEO who promises Mars but delivers vaporware. Since the first time I spoke to you, I have not spoken again about the moral argument for selling Tesla. It is still compelling. But the moral argument for divesting from companies furthering the genocide in Palestine is even more compelling. We can't say we didn't know the Israelis are perpetrating a genocidal Holocaust against the Palestinians. It's as if the destruction of European Jewry were front-page news every night, but we kept our investment in IG Farben because Farben had growth potential. There was money to be made
Thank
in
you for your
Zyklon
comment.
B. No decent.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Edward, followed by Susan.
I'm Edward Hasbrook, spouse of a retired teacher and a CalSTRS beneficiary. I'm here to present you with signatures from 580 additional signers of a petition calling for divestment from Tesla, including individual comments from many. 160 of these signers, additional signers to this petition. You've gotten more than 1,000 before at your previous meetings. 160 are CalSTRS members and beneficiaries. We've been told by the board that we should talk to the investment staff. The investment staff has told us that they have no direction from the board to assess the risk or valuation of any individual stock and won't do it unless directed by the board. The message we're getting is that to date, due diligence hasn't been delegated, it's been abdicated. We urge you to act on this petition and take the first concrete step by directing the staff to prepare an assessment of the risk and valuation of Tesla. I have copies for each member of the board.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be...
Please give them to the staff in the back. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Our next speaker will be Susan, followed by Mary Jo.
Susan McCarthy, I live in San Francisco. I'm with Divest from Tesla. I ask that CalSTRS divest from Tesla stock because the partisan political activities of the bizarre CEO, Elon Musk, are making the company an unusually risky investment. I would like to talk about a recent working paper put out by the National Bureau of Economic Research. They looked at how Musk's polarizing and partisan actions affected Tesla sales in the U.S. from October 2022 to April 2025. They found this effect caused sales to go down between 67 and 83%, about 1 to 1.25 million cars not sold. Sales of other electric cars went up, but not enough to make for the gap. This had 3 results. Fewer Teslas were sold, more EVs from other makers were sold, but the gap between how many Teslas were not sold and how many other electric cars were sold meant that many fewer electric cars were sold. As a result, California will not meet its 2026 zero-emission target.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Mary Jo, followed by Melinda.
Good morning. My name is Mary Jo Walker. I'm a CalPERS member. I'm a retired CPA, retired city finance director, and a county auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector. CalPERS board directed their staff to investigate and report on the risk of continuing to own Tesla. I hope that CalSTRS will do the same thing. Over the past 5 years, Tesla's price has increased by 50%. That doesn't sound bad, except the major indexes and the other Magnificent Seven were all much better. Apple, Alphabet, Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Amazon, they all did better than 50%. Most of them double what Tesla has made. Also, another point I'd like to make is that your ESG policy lists many risk factors that your staff should assess. Tesla has obvious and significant violations of some of these risks. Please look at that. Finally, $1 trillion is $1 million. I know the package is contingent. I know it's a stunt, but he could easily make $50 million by hitting a handful of
Thank you for your
goals.
comment. Our next speaker will be Melinda, followed by Josh.
Good morning. My name is Melinda Starr, and I'm speaking on behalf of the statewide CalSTRS Divest campaign. We would still like to meet with you. We've not seen any evidence that CalSTRS has investigated or engaged with any of the companies we identified as violating your ESG policy. We call on any board member with a moral compass to direct the investment staff to investigate the equities named in the report we provided and begin divestment immediately. Our movement is growing, becoming stronger and louder. Despite the so-called ceasefire, the genocide, occupation, and ethnic cleansing continues, and we will keep showing up until CalSTRS stops investing in these criminal companies. Meet with us. CalSTRS Divest.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Josh, followed by Sarah.
Hello, I'm Josh, a high school teacher, here on behalf of CalSTRS Divest campaign. CalSTRS is invested in Israel bonds, which fund the Israeli military and government, including the war on Gaza, forced displacement of Palestinian families, and apartheid. We oppose investments in the Israeli military, government, and corporations that enable this suffering. Israel's debt is rising, its credit rating has been downgraded twice, and its economy is weakening, making Israel bonds a riskier investment than ever. Yet CalSTRS continues to buy these bonds. As teachers and beneficiaries, we urge CalSTRS to abide by its ESG and portfolio restrictions investment policies and stop purchasing Israeli bonds, as long as Israel violates human rights. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Sarah, followed by Carla.
Extremely high.
Good morning. My name is Sarah. I'm a faculty member at American River College. My union, the Los Rios College Federation of Teachers, represents 2,200 faculty in the second largest community college district in the state of California. We have formally endorsed the CalSTRS Divest campaign. We demand that you divest from weapons manufacturers like Elbit Systems, which you have over $15 million invested in, and other equities that are directly tied to the genocide in Gaza and the illegal settlements in the West Bank. We call on the board to meet with the CalSTRS Divest team and investigate investments named in the updated report in accordance with the ESG investment policy. Over 20,000 children have been killed by Israel. 97% of the schools in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. All universities have been destroyed. As educators, we cannot accept our pensions funding this devastation. We demand that you divest from genocide and invest in life. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Carla, followed by Fauzia.
My name is Carla Schick. As a retired CTA member, Jewish teacher and mentor, I am horrified that CalSTRS continues to invest in corporations that provide surveillance tools and weapons to enable the genocide in Gaza and force removal against international law in Gaza and the West Bank. Elbit and Palantir are two corporations that are profiting from genocide. Although there is a supposed ceasefire, the murderous attacks on Palestinians continue. We call on CalSTRS to make investments for a sustainable future. We cannot deny the reality of Palestinians in Gaza. CalSTRS, as the second largest pension fund in the country, must center its investments on its own ESG policies and divest from corporations that violate our own ethical principles. As educators, we know that the scholasticide or the destruction of all institutions of learning and culture is part of this genocide. As educators, how can we, in good conscience, financially support this? I call on CalSTRS not to be complicit in these illegal actions.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Fauzia, followed by Clemen.
Good morning. I'm speaking on behalf of CARE California. My name is Fauzia Farouk. We are the state's largest Muslim civil rights organization. CalSTRS is a public institution. Its investments should reflect the values of teachers and communities, not companies complicit in the occupation of Palestine or the targeting of civilians. Teachers are supporting students who are grieving real loss. Their pensions should not fund the weapons harming those families abroad. That is a political choice, and one CalSTRS can change. California has divested before from private prisons, firearms, and human rights abusers. The same principle applies here. Staying invested is not just immoral, it's irresponsible. Teachers, students, and civil rights groups across California are united. Review the portfolio, identify those companies, and divest now.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Clemen, followed by Kathy.
Hello, my name is Clemen Avalos, and I am a school psychologist in LAUSD, here representing United Teachers Los Angeles, the second largest union, teachers union with over 35,000 members. I'm speaking today because our pensions in our classrooms are being undermined by the forces of privatization and profiteering, and CalSTRS has the power to stop investing in companies that are committing genocide, as well as divesting from private equity firms that are harming our livelihoods. UTLA also calls on transparent communication. Refusing to meet with teachers, calling for divestment erodes our trust. CalSTRS is a $380 billion fund, one of the largest in the world. That means that we have both immense power and responsibility. Israeli bonds have now been downgraded to junk status by Moody's. Continuing to hold them is a financial, legal, and moral risk. We are asking CalSTRS to align its investments with its stated values, divest from companies engaging in genocide, and from private equity firms that are harming us. Thank you
for your comment. Our next speaker will be Kathy, followed by Nadine.
My name is Kathy Moon, and I am here in... Do what? Oh, move close to the mic. Is this better? Okay. My name is Kathy Moon, and I am here in support of faculty and staff for justice and peace in Palestine, and to represent Vicki Carroll, a retired public school teacher who lives in Atascadero and unable to attend. According to your investment policy for mitigating environmental, social, and government risks, and the investment restriction policy, the CalSTRS Chief Investment Officer is required to investigate and identify investments that are not in compliance with that policy. Many of the companies you invest in are complicit in the genocide in Gaza and the ethnic cleansing ICE is committing against our immigrant communities. Your Public Affairs Office stated that CalSTRS must remain invested in these companies to, quote, balance achievable investment returns, end quote, for their members. Divesting carries zero risk to the pension fund, and choosing to prioritize investment. Divest
Thank you
now.
for your comment. Our next speaker will be Nadine, followed by Isaac.
Hello.
I am a student at Los Rios. Divestment to me is about express solidarity. It is about rejecting the crimes against humanity and those who profit off of war, ethnic cleansing, and genocide. This is not something we should just know within our hearts. This is something we must do in our actions. I think about my little nephews, who are half Palestinian, who are my little angels. I think about the children in Gaza. We must address them. We must use all that we have at our disposal to express our solidarity with them. That we disavow ourselves from those who profit off of their killing. We must prove that we have not become so desensitized, so pliant, and so impotent that we ignore their suffering and ignore our duty to them. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Isaac, followed by Jared.
That's Mr. Isaac. In Darfur, Sudan, there's an unspeakable massacre taking place right now. Since 2023, over 150,000 Black Africans have been slaughtered by UAE paramilitary groups. The most recent massacre was so perverse that you could see the blood from space. This body co-partners with UAE on a $4 billion commercial real estate investment. We're not asking you to divest. We're asking that you develop a geopolitical risk strategy so you can assess the probability that you're going to lose all the money in this investment, just like you did with the Russian money. We have a Freedom of Information Act request before this body. Please honor it and don't stonewall us. You enjoy your holidays. People in Darfur will not. Have a nice day.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Jared, followed by Jose.
My name is Jared Gavey Beagle with UFCW. I want to update you on recent events at Heritage Grocers, a grocery chain owned by Apollo Fund 9, in which CalSTRS has invested $300 million. Apollo's choice to ignore risks from Heritage's labor practices is a clear example of how CalSTRS would benefit from adopting enforceable labor principles for private equity managers. Heritage's troubling labor record in California is deteriorating. Recall that under Apollo's ownership, the company has settled 2 class action lawsuits alleging violations of California labor code at a cost of $4 million without admitting wrongdoing. Now, the company faces 3 new lawsuits, all alleging violations of similar provisions of California labor code. The company denies the allegations in all cases. If STRS had labor principles for managers like Apollo, early accountability might have changed practices that continue to give rise to litigation costs and operational risks at Cardenas. Likewise, when Valeria Alvarez spoke to you about her experience suffering sexual harassment at Cardenas, reporting it and subsequently being terminated, Apollo told you and other limited partners that it wasn't true and that Cardenas was in the right. Fast forward 2 years and Cardenas now has 8 outstanding lawsuits alleging sexual harassment and retaliation for reporting
Thank you for your comment.
We urge you to develop labor principles.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Jose, who will receive 2 minutes because they will have a translator. Nancy will translate for him.
Okay. Mi nombre es José Oliveros y yo trabajé por Cárdenas en San Jacinto y de propiedad de Apolo. Voy a decir que sufrí de acoso sexual por los recursos humanos. También reporté de OSHA por las temperaturas de 100 grados trabajar y estuve habitualmente trabajando. No entiendo. Bueno, y el día de ayer una trabajadora de recursos humanos llamada Erika me habló para decirme que me daba $7 más que regresara a trabajar y que retirara todos los cargos en contra de Cárdenas y que hablara en contra de la Unión.
I'm going to speak on behalf of Jose Olivares. So he recently got terminated by Cardenas. The reason why, because he reported a Cal OSHA working under the conditions of 100 degrees in the kitchen. Also for reporting an HR sexual harassment. The manager wanted to have sex with him, have a baby by him with green eyes. And due to that, of him reporting that, the company fired him, and recently he was just reached this week the company wants to offer him more money and for him to remove the charges and speak badly about the union. So he's been called multiple times to return back to work with the conditions of removing the charges and speaking badly about the union.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Aruj, followed by David.
Hello, good morning. I'm a local parent here of 4 public school children, 8 public school children. I'm going to amplify what's already been said, that CalSTRS must immediately investigate and divest from genocide investments. Planeteer, Caterpillar, Lockheed Martin, Elbit Systems, Bank Leumi, First International Bank of Israel, Israel Discount Bank, and Israeli bonds in accordance with the ESG investment policy and investment restrictions policy. We call on the board to direct the investment staff to conduct a special report about the equities named. And the reports provided to you 2 months ago. As a mother, hearing about all of the abuses and the genocide that's taken place in Gaza, it's absolutely unacceptable to me. The fact that children haven't been able to go to school for 2 years, the fact that they live in fear, that they are starved, that they're hungry. As someone who loves public schools, who's a beneficiary of public schools, I am just appalled that you would think that retirees should benefit and live their lives out on the literal blood of children and the destruction of education. So I call upon you to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be David, followed by Jeffrey.
Good morning. Thank you for listening to us. I support all the demands for divestment from genocide that you've heard from others, but I want to focus particularly on one that you've heard a little bit about. I'm a retired human rights attorney, and I follow these things carefully. I'm also an American Jew who was brought up to see very clearly that the marketing and purchasing of Israeli bonds was not done so much as a profitable investment, but as a way of identifying with the country that it turns out, as we learned in the course of time, was in denial about expelling and displacing the native Palestinians from the country, and now developing a system of apartheid and committing genocide. This is also true, I'm guessing, of institutions that have invested in Israeli bonds. There's a special California law that enables groups like, or agencies like CalSTRS and CalPERS to invest in Israel bonds where they're not allowed to invest in bonds of other countries. And I think it's time, certainly time to end this practice. It should be an easy lift. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Jeffrey, followed by Saul.
My name is Jeffrey Gottesman. I'm a retired Contra Costa Community College District retiree and also representing Peace and Justice Center of Nevada County. And every time my STRS pension hits my account, I'm glad to have the money, but I feel a deep sense of shame that that money has been earned because of the suffering of the Palestinian people. Every time I realize that check has hit my account, that I'm also guilty of involvement in the torture, rape of prisoners at State Taman, and I invite you to share with me the shame for your role in continuing that support and to divest.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Saul, followed by Kat.
Hi, my name is Saul Kanowitz. I'm with the Megan for CA campaign. She's running for controller. I want to echo what has been said about demanding that CalSTRS divest from companies that profit off genocide. In the past, you have divested from private prisons, and you divested from the apartheid South African government. That was a law that forced you to do that. That law was passed because of the people. The people of this country stand opposed to the genocide, and you should follow the demands and the will of the people. I demand you should divest. It's interesting for people here that the controller has not been to any of these meetings to talk about divestment. Megan's platform talks about overseeing the divestment from companies that profit off of genocide.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Kath.
Hi, I'm Kath, and I'm speaking for 1,500 people in Yolo County who signed a petition in person calling for CalSTRS to divest from Tesla. As fiduciaries, you have a responsibility to ensure that our investments reflect ethical and sustainable values CalSTRS publicly upholds. Tesla's track record increasingly puts both at risk. Tesla has been repeatedly cited for unsafe working environments, union-busting behavior, and discrimination at its Fremont plant here in California. Its CEO, Elon Musk, has shown a consistent disregard for corporation oversight, posting market-moving statements and engaging behavior that creates instability and reputational risk. It should not be rewarded with our pension dollars. While Tesla markets itself as clean energy leader, its environmental record does not. Pollution violations, poor recycling of batteries, and supply chains linked to human rights abuses, including child labor and cobalt mining. Tesla's own ESG ratings have dropped sharply.
Thank you for your comment. So we will now be moving to the phone portion of public comment. Our first speaker will be Michael. Michael, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Michael Hoffman. I'm here representing AFT 1493, which is the union representing over 900 educators, faculty, counselors, librarians, and many other education professionals in San Mateo County. The elected leadership of our union voted overwhelmingly to support the demands of the CalSTRS Divest campaign. We do not want a future that is funding not only genocide in other places, but also technologies that are actually used against our own students to surveil and deport them, which we have directly experienced in the last few months. So our members are largely people who work actually with students, and we want a future that is not funding both genocide and surveillance and political repression. And I think that it is a democratic
Thank you for your comment.
choice, meaning it is the will of the majority to
Thank you for your
divest.
comment.
Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Maggie. Maggie, go
Hi,
ahead.
my name is Maggie Dawes. Yes, my name is Maggie Dawes. I am with a retired teacher from San Rafael City Schools, San Rafael Teachers Association. I've been watching the brutal treatment of Palestinian children for over 2 years. It has left me feeling deeply ashamed and disappointed in CalSTRS. I call on CalSTRS to investigate and divest from its unscrupulous investments, Palantir, Caterpillar, Lockheed Martin, Elbit, any kind of Israeli bank or bonds. As an educator, I'm appalled that 90% of the schools and universities have been directly targeted and destroyed. This goes against what we strive for as educators. As it stands now, CalSTRS investments are deeply troubling. We demand that teacher activist voices be heard. Please reopen the dialogue with these teachers. CIO Scott Chan has the power to divest immediately without harming our pensions. Let's make CalSTRS an organization that we as teachers can take pride in
Thank you for your
and
comment.
trust.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Pega. Pega, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Pega Matalib. I'm here to represent AFT Guild 1931. We're a union to 2 community college districts in Southern California, San Diego Community College District and Grossmont-Cuyamaca Community College District. I'm here to call CalSTRS board to divest from companies that fund Israel's genocide. I'm asking members of the board to reopen dialogue with teacher activists. We represent the voices of hundreds of thousands of teachers in California, as well as union members. My ask today also aligns with our union values to divest from companies that invest in military technology. I'm here to be another voice that calls on the board of CalSTRS to immediately investigate, and divest from genocide investments in accordance with the ESG investment policy and the investment restrictions policy. As educators and community members, we entrust CalSTRS to invest our retirement funds responsibly, and CalSTRS is eroding the trust of its members. We don't want blood money, and today CalSTRS could, as of today, CalSTRS continues to.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Ralph. Ralph?
Yes, my name is Ralph Ballard, and I teach physics at Ohlone Community College. My main message today is by continuing your Tesla investment, you're about to lose $1 billion. Tesla's robo-taxi technology, based on only cameras, and in their Model Ys, the chip that does the processing is a 5-year-old design. When Musk pulls the safety drivers out of those cars in Austin, Texas, in the next few months, there may be a fatal accident, and poof, $1 billion will be gone. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Jeff. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Jeff Sanseri. I'm the president of Peralta Federation of Teachers, Local 1603. We're a strong and vocal union representing about 1,000 community college educators in the Bay Area. And through our vote in favor of STRS divestment, we've made it clear that under no circumstances do we want to be complicit in genocide in Palestine or the forced abduction of our own community members here in the U.S. And through CalSTRS investments, our pensions, that's how our faculty members are feeling right now. As a union faculty, we've made it clear that CalSTRS must immediately investigate and divest and stop investing in companies that fund and support genocide and ICE abductions. Right now in Gaza, even with the ceasefire taking place, the ethnic cleansing and occupation is still happening. It's still going on and getting worse. And we're calling on the board to direct the investment staff to follow the ESG policy to conduct a financial analysis on the risk of investing our pensions in Israeli bonds, banks, Palantir, Elbit Systems, Caterpillar, and Lockheed Martin. You have an opportunity right now to make some serious change and do the right thing and begin taking serious steps to divest.
Thank you for your comment.
And thank you.
Our next speaker will be Julaine. Julaine, go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. My name is Julaine Rosner. I've been a CalSTRS member for over 27 years, and I'm grateful to the board for protecting our pensions. I'm calling because I'm deeply concerned that CalSTRS still holds millions of shares in Tesla. Elon Musk's actions, especially on social media and through his creation of Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, raised serious ethical and financial concerns. What was once an innovative company has become a volatile and high risk. I urge the board to follow CalPERS' example, review Tesla's risk, and move toward divestment for the sake of both our values and our financial future. As educators and public servants, we're proud union members. It just doesn't sit right for our retirement funds to support a company led by someone who's anti-union and dismissive of public service. Please divest from Tesla.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Matthew H. Matthew, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Matthew Helgeson. I'm just with the CalSTRS Divest campaign. I'm just calling again, like many others, to ask for immediate investigation and divestment from companies like Palantir, Caterpillar, Lockheed Martin, Elbit Systems, and many of the others that have been mentioned, I believe, just given the scope and undeniability of what appears to me and many other organizations like the International Court of Justice, B'Tselem, which is Israel's own human rights organization, the largest association of genocide scholars, to be a genocide. So with that, I just ask that CalSTRS divest along with CIO Scott Chan's investigation or financial analysis on financial risk of divesting from pensions.
Thank you for your comment.
Pensions.
Our next speaker will be Sarah. Sarah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sarah Holtz, and I'm an organizer with OPEIU. I'm commenting today about Teleperformance, a French multinational that CalSTRS holds a $54 million investment in. OPEIU and CWA are organizing interpreters at Teleperformance, a mix of sign language interpreters and spoken language interpreters. We're commenting today because we urge CalSTRS to help us win our union. CalSTRS can convene a table of Teleperformance investors and urge Teleperformance to extend its global agreement that it is currently negotiating with UNI, an international federation of labor unions. ASL interpreters provide essential service that ensures that our country can be compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. We urge CalSTRS to take action at Teleperformance as quickly as possible and help us win our union, because we know workers' rights on the job build strong and profitable companies. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Lena. Lena, go ahead. Hello, Lena?
One moment, please. Hi, my name is Lena, and I'm so sorry. My name is Lena, and I'm one of 4,000 language interpreters at Language Line Solutions, a company owned by Teleperformance, one of the largest call center corporations in the world, providing service in over 200 languages across the United States. We help people communicate sometimes in their most vulnerable moments, in hospitals, schools, courtrooms, and emergency calls, making sure they're heard and understood. As CalSTRS knows, language access is a civil right under the Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Any organization that receives federal funding must provide meaningful access for people with limited English proficiency. Interpreters make that right real. We make sure that no one is denied care, justice, education, simply because of the language they speak. Our work can shift in an instant, one moment interpreting a 911 call, the next helping a doctor explain a life-saving procedure, or guiding a teacher and parent through a child's IEP meeting.
Thank you for your
It's deeply
comment.
meaningful work.
Our next speaker will be Vish. Vish, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Vish. Hi, my name is Vish S. I'm with UAW Local 2320 in the State Democratic Socialists of America. The people that have been speaking today all educate my kids, our kids, and they are telling you that they don't want you to invest their pension funds in companies that enable genocide or in Tesla, and you really should listen to them. It really is incomprehensible to me that teachers' pensions are invested in companies like Lockheed Martin, that is responsible for fueling at least 2 ongoing genocides right now. We all know about the role in Lockheed Martin in fueling the genocide in Palestine. We also heard somebody talking about Darfur. Lockheed Martin is fueling that genocide in Darfur right now as well, too. Lockheed Martin has essentially had its fingerprints on every stain on human history, from the war in Iraq to Afghanistan. There's no reason that teachers' pensions should be invested in those. All these other companies that they're asking to divest from, Caterco, Elbit, Palantir, they're responsible for the genocide in Gaza and for oppressing.
Our next speaker will be Eve. Eve, go ahead.
Hi, my name's Eve Abrahams, and as an American of Jewish descent, I would like to speak out against any investment in Israel. What Israel is doing in Gaza and the West Bank is not self-defense, it's annihilation, and it's only causing more division, hatred, and anti-Semitism in the world. The fact that we as a country are providing weapons and financial support for Israel to inflict these human rights violations, and that our government continues to stand by Israel in the genocide by saying they have a right to defend themselves, is abhorrent. I don't know how Israel can be considered a democracy when they are an occupying power over Gaza and the West Bank. The very basis of a democracy is that all people are equal, and yet that has not been the case in Israel since the Nakba. We demand immediate divestment from any equities that are tied to the Gaza genocide and illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank. Not in my name. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Matt M.
Samantha, how many more speakers do we have?
We have 6. Matt, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi, I'm Matt Meyer. I'm the president of the Berkeley Federation of Teachers. My members are alarmed that CalSTRS is stonewalling this really important conversation around how our investment dollars, our retirements, go fund genocides. This idea is popular amongst my members to pull our money out of companies that cause harm, specifically when countries are attempting to annihilate entire people. And we just can't believe that CalSTRS is not engaging on this conversation. We've been able to restrict investments on guns, private prisons, but why is it that when we start talking about genocide, it's just a conversation that isn't happening?
Thank you for your
CalSTRS
comment.
is definitely losing credibility amongst
Thank
my
you for your
members.
comment.
Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Wendy. Wendy, go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Wendy Greenfield, and I'm a proud retiree of the California Public Schools. For 35 years, I worked long hours teaching and prepping lessons, and definitely feel I've earned my CalSTRS pension. Now, however, when I see the STRS deposit in my account, I become totally grief-stricken, as I'm reminded that this money is currently made at the cost of the lives of teachers in Gaza and the West Bank, their families, and even the children themselves. Over 20,000 precious children have been killed in Gaza since October 2023. Every CalSTRS member I know shares these feelings. You who represent the interests of current and retired teachers, remember that the main reason teachers chose this profession is because of our love for children and all human beings. To truly represent our interests, both financial and moral, you must divest our funds from all companies and entities such as Israel bonds that enable apartheid and genocide.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Harriet. Harriet, go ahead.
I'm a 30-year member of CTA and a retiree. Calling for BDS is an anti-Semitic movement. It's a global movement to threaten Israel's existence. Radical supporters of Hamas's terrorist attack on Israel will use propaganda to call for the boycott of Israel and their companies. Israel is not committing genocide. Palestinian population was 1.3 million in 1948 and is now approximately 6.8 million. Israel facilitates delivery of thousands of tons of medicine and food, while Hamas steals those supplies and locates weapons in the schools and in the hospitals. And most combatants are males of a combat age, including 13 to 55-year-olds. There is no evidence that Israel intentionally targets innocent Gazan Palestinians. It's very important that CalSTRS is not misled by the propaganda that Israel intentionally is committing genocide.
Thank you for your comment.
Wrong.
Our next speaker will be Nikki. Nikki, go ahead.
Sure, thanks. My name's Nikki, and I was at the last meeting and heard the chairperson speak about the noble responsibility that is entrusted to this board regarding these retirement funds and the financial future of our teachers and our workers. And it is so important, but I want to say there's nothing noble about Ilbeat Systems. There's nothing noble about Lockheed Martin, nothing noble about Palantir. There's nothing noble about building our own futures, the futures of our families on the blood of children and families elsewhere. It's absolutely ignoble. You should be ashamed of yourself. You should already be looking at ways to divest. People have been letting you know this. Your members have been letting you know this. They do not want this blood on their hands. They wake up with it. They go to bed with it. They spend every purchase with it. And it's devastating. Morally, it's devastating. You need to move this money. You know,
Thank
the
you for your
last
comment.
caller. Sure.
Our next speaker is Farav. Farav, go ahead.
Yes, hi, this is Hazard Kumer. I have children and some with disabilities, and I feel always to support children and be there for them. And I think all of us listening as human beings do too. I can understand how we can love our kids and try to support them on one hand, and then participate in killing children of other people across the world. And it's when it says it's not a genocide, it is genocide. Everybody agrees. UN, the World Court, all the human rights organizations. The only people who don't agree are the AIPAC supporters. And basically, like I say, we all have children, and we all, don't want to see children suffer. And I can't believe that we're using our money to actually harm children and are okay with that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Farvad. That is the conclusion of the phone comments for item 2.
Thanks, Samantha. So, to be really clear that we have a terrific team that is accessible to members of the public, that will report back to us at the meetings that they have with you, that we're kept in the loop. They may not meet with you as often as you would like, but they will meet with you. They will hear your concerns, and they will explain to you what our views on all of these issues. I can assure you I've been on this board a really long time. And to a person, whether they're our staff working in the executive offices or staff members that we rarely see, whether they're our consultants or advisors and my colleagues on the board, to a person, we are curious, we are compassionate, we care deeply about the mission of this organization, and we wrestle with these extremely complex issues. So our compassion, our curiosity, and our commitment to do what we believe is fiduciarily sound on very, very complex issues is something that we take extremely seriously. And to question our moral compass is just inaccurate, simply inaccurate. So I want to thank you for taking the time to come today and share your views with us. Our staff will meet with you accordingly, and they'll document those meetings and share with you, share with us their meetings and their findings and their communications. And if in consultation with our consultants and our professional staff, we think some of the requests that you're making are reasonable, we'll pursue them. If not, we won't, in accordance and adherence with our fiduciary responsibility. So I want to thank everyone for being here. We're going to take a short 5-minute break, and then we'll come back with the remainder of our meeting. Thank you. Scott, we're going to go right to you with item 3, which is the Chief Investment Officer's report. Morning, Scott. Good to see you.
Good morning. Great to see you, Harry, and the Investment Committee. I wanted to cover 3 things in my CR report. Number 1, starting with everyone's favorite topic, AI. Number 2, I want to talk about our award-winning real estate team. And the third, to formally welcome and introduce our new Director of RMS. So those are the 3 items. Let me just start with AI by saying that I've been surprised at the power of the AI wave, so to speak. If you looked at the past 12 months, if you recall in the beginning of the year, we were in correction territory. The S&P was down 19%. Housing and manufacturing were slowing, and we had this event with the tariffs that could, potentially cause a recession. And I think many believed that that would be the case. Fast forward today, 37% up. The S&P has risen. And so what happened here, I believe the biggest factor has been the strength in the spending on AI, which have been estimated at somewhere between 0.7 and 1% of GDP, or even over 1% of GDP in some cases, as well as the strength of the earnings of our technology companies. So this has largely offset the impact of the resolution of the tariffs, the slower manufacturing and tepid housing. Now, to be fair, we also got some relief through lower interest rates and the resolution of the tariffs, the pause, and we all know the story there. So before I start talking a little bit about what I think are some of the risks of AI and a potential bubble, and I'll address that question. I do think that AI is going to be one of the largest drivers of productivity. It certainly is one of the largest opportunity sets for CalSTRS in the future. It's going to be transformative to companies, sectors, and even countries. So, but saying all that, there are risks in this transformation that are evolving very quickly as well. So are we in an AI bubble? I think this has been a question with many drawing parallels to the last tech bubble. I know Michael is nodding his head. We had a conversation about that, which prompted me to say this. I don't think we're in a bubble yet. Why I say that is because there's always this tension between valuations and fundamentals that goes on. But if I looked at the fundamentals of these technology companies, they're printing earnings, printing lots of cash flow. Their balance sheets look solid. So the market valuations are stretched, and that is a risk. The higher they rise, the potential higher they may fall in a cyclical period. And so that represents risk. And of course, they need to continue to earn higher and higher earnings in order to continue this. So that being said, what are the risks? Well, technology risk, I think, is a large one. So if we looked at all the portfolio companies, public and private, that we own, some sectors are going to see their earnings pool decline significantly, or they will need to offset these declines by further productivity or gains within AI. Now, AI is expected to yield greater efficiencies. We all know that, but it could cause workers also to be displaced or reallocated. So if you look at 2025, the World Economic Forum estimated that by 2030, 92 million jobs could be displaced. Huge. While on the other hand, 120 new jobs could be created, but it's that interchange between the two that poses risk in human capital and labor. So without proper training and workforce planning, this could be, many workers could be left behind. AI also impacts the economy's workforce because the local community are engaged in different priorities. So if we think about the broader development and implementation of AI, the health of workers really will also most likely lead to the health of our fund. And we're focused on this in many, many different ways. I also want to talk about how office buildings, while we're seeing an inflection point upwards as workers are migrating or displaced, that could cause longer-term risks as well. So that's something for us to keep an eye on. Many of you have heard of the infrastructure build-out, and some of this has risk as well because nobody that I know of can adequately say what is the compute power we need over the long term, right? We're short computer power today, and we're building data centers, but it stands to reason, and we've seen this in the past, that technology can transform so quickly, we may not need some of that, or we may need actually even more. So this is a risk to think about as well. So what are we doing today? What is CalSTRS doing? One is I've asked my senior team to ensure that each investment professional becomes an expert in underwriting AI in their different domains. And this is a tall calling because we all have to learn very quickly to become experts to get on top of this. I want them ultimately to look at every opportunity from the risk reward and lens of AI. And we're engaged today, we're deeply engaged in conversations with our industry peers and partners in trying to shape some of the best practices and governance, which today is really evolving. And we, I think, are on the forefront of that. But because this is quickly evolving, engagement is more important than it ever has been. And that's something that historically we've been very good at. I've also asked my total fund team to aggregate all of our exposures just so we understand, do we have enough exposure, but also are we overexposed in many different ways because there's so many second and third derivatives where this is reaching. And that's going to take some time for us, particularly in the private markets, to get our arms around. For me, the AI wave is right now, it seems like it's lifting all boats. And so we're seeing a premium across the capital structure. But I do think that it's time to be concerned about where you place your risk. And interestingly, I don't see a differentiation in the risk premium between lower or higher risks. And so there is an opportunity here to make a difference in that. I would characterize the AI phase, though, as something that, if I look back in history, it reminds me of when we were tackling the path to net zero. And we're doing similar things if you think about it and how it is evolving over time. It's just like any large-scale opportunity, risk and reward that we've tackled in the past. So let me pause here and see if there are any questions on this theme before I move on to the other two.
Let me get Steve here.
What you just mentioned about the seemingly similar returns on whether of low risk versus high risk. Did I hear you say that right?
Yeah.
So, which would tend one to believe, obviously we want low risk if it's going to provide the same return. Is that what you're saying? Are there opportunities out there to do that?
Yes, I think there are opportunities today to differentiate because we're just seeing the tide lift all boats. And so when that happens, you want to prepare for the future. So one example is if you think about where in the cap structure might be really interesting for you to be is in something akin to a triple net lease where you have a 20-year lease from a AA, AAA credit that's paying you a premium because they have such scale to deploy this capital. So that would be an area, for example, we're focused on in that capital structure and making sure that we have the right counterparty, the right terms to do so. These are, I think, some of the nuances that are going to differentiate people in the future. When the tide goes away, obviously you'll see what happens.
Patrick?
I appreciate your approach when it comes to AI. I mean, clearly the S&P is overweight when it comes to AI, which brings with it a whole different group of other issues. Our state is leading the way, so that is a very big positive when it comes to a lot of these jobs that you had talked about. But we're very concerned about how much of our dollars are starting to go in that direction because just such generally the indications.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, back to you, Scott.
Great. Well, on to item number 2. I'm pleased to share that CalSTRS real estate program was recently awarded the ESG award by PRIA at its fall conference. We are the first and I think the only U.S. pension plan to receive this award. Not surprisingly, prior winners have come from Europe, but also Canada. The award criteria includes things like leadership, innovation, and results, and how resilient the ESG program is here. So please join me in congratulating CalSTRS Real Estate for this honor. It was a team effort. I also want to thank the SIS team who assisted in reviewing that application and helping with all of the review of that. So I'm thrilled for them. Now, in the splash zone, we have Puneet Kohli. And Puneet, I don't know if you know what the splash zone is. So the camera can shine right on you, but I'm pleased to announce the appointment of Puneet as our new Director of RMS. Puneet will be reporting directly to Geraldine Jimenez, our Senior Investment Director of Public Markets. And as you know, RMS is going to continue to focus on preserving capital, delivering positive returns, being uncorrelated on behalf of the total fund, and hopefully providing more resilience to the total portfolio. I'm really excited for Puneet joining us. I think he's going to help us lead several initiatives. Number one, the collaborative model within RMS will be working with other public markets directors on incubating internal strategies. Number two, leveraging some of our alternative managers to contribute to our TPA or CalSTRS One Fund approach, and then working with the RMS team to focus on and find us more and more uncorrelated strategies. So again, please join me in congratulating Geraldine. I also want to put in a special thanks to Brian and the legal team and Crystal and the HR team. It was a true team effort to bring Puneet in. It's our first international hire.
Well done. Nate, on behalf of the investment committee, welcome to a great team with an incredible mission. And RMS plays such an important role in helping us to reach our ultimate objective, which is that net of fees return that helps to pay the benefit for our teachers. So welcome to the team. We're thrilled you're with us. Scott, anything else? All right, great. Thank you. So we'll go to our next item, which is item 4. This is an annual cost and collaborative model savings report. April, Shafat, and Mike, come on up. And I want to steal your thunder, but this is a report we're all very proud of. Come on up, Shafat. Who's going to lead? April, welcome. Mike, good to see you. April and Shafat.
Thank you. April Wilcox, Senior Investment Director. I have with me Mike Dunnigan, Associate Portfolio Manager, and Shafat Hassan, Head of Performance and Compliance. And we're going to give you an overview of our cost and collaborative model savings report for calendar year 2024. So these are all the expenses that were paid during calendar year 2024. So it is considered a cash basis. But before we dive into it, we wanted just to spend a minute to remind some folks and some of the newer board members of how this report comes together. So for our private assets, we outsource to Mercer to pull together and collect those costs. They use a variety of things, one of them being ILPA template, which is like a unified template in the private equity industry used to gather and analyze costs. They also do validation and testing against financial statements before they give us those costs. Separate from the cost report, we do have an independent third party that comes in annually and does sample testing, looking at the management fees and the carried interest and recalculate those, and they do that on a rotating sample basis. So other than private assets, we take the cost from Mercer, and then sitting right here to my right, compiles those with all of our costs using data from our financial services accounting system. For the collaborative model savings portion, we also use those same costs and some inputs from our co-investments. And the methodology and approach has been tested by Makita and approved by Makita when we first set this up. So that's just a little bit of history. We now have 10 years worth of data in this report, which is a really good amount of time to do some proper trend analysis that will go into that. Wanted to point out that the report shows that we are a low-cost fund. We do not compromise the quality of our returns by being low cost. And so that means every dollar that you see in this report that we save ends up going back into the fund, it compounds, and it goes back out to pay teachers benefits. So very excited, want to make sure we didn't forget that. And then lastly, before I pass it off, our expenses are tied a lot to the value of the fund, our NAV, our net asset value, which is impacted by the market. So we wanted to start just by giving you a really quick refresh of what happened in the market last calendar year. So I'll pass it off to my team.
Thank you, April. So as April mentioned, in the past, in the previous years, we've talked about how expenses are tied to the net asset value. So I want to take you all the way back to 2024 so you get a picture of what was happening in the financial markets. It's been 11 months since we've done that. Not much has changed, but back in 2024, we saw that the markets were defined by a very strong U.S. stock market. So that was driven by AI enthusiasm, Magnificent Seven, tech giants as a whole. The S&P rose over 23% for that year, and it was the second year of 20% growth. So we're talking about a huge driven U.S. stock market. Bond markets were somewhat volatile, though. So they were reflecting expected interest rate changes throughout the year until September when the Fed finally cut rates. That was an expected move, but it helped bring bond markets up to about 1.5% for the year. On the private side, we saw real estate down for the second year in a row, but it was offset by private equity and infrastructure growth and returns. So it's pretty strong. So CalSTRS total fund as a whole returned 7.7% for that year. We earned $25 billion that came back to the teachers, and we closed the year at close to $350 billion. So very strong. So I mentioned that we closed at $350 billion, but when we want to look at the trends in our investment costs, we want to look at the average NAV. So you'll see that the NAV we have here is slightly different than the close of the year. When we want to talk about how much costs it takes to run the entire total fund relative to the size of the fund, we get that gray trend bar at the top right there. And you can see that over the last 5 years, this is the lowest it's been. Our portfolio costs, which are the green bars, and that's made up of like management fees and operating expenses, as well as the carried interest, which is the purple bar. Those were the lowest from a basis point perspective that we've seen in the last 3 years. So we're seeing a reduction in costs significantly. And even though, what this is telling us is that even though our NAV went up, our costs were not growing at the same rate as they have in the past. So when we look strictly at the dollars, which is at the bottom there, we see that our average NAV grew 9%, but our portfolio costs, which are generally tied, and this is what April was talking about, those are generally tied to the net asset value, they only grew 1%, so there's a big disparage as what we've seen in the past. Carried interest was down 14%. That's not as correlated to NAV change in a single year, so that's just the profit sharing component, but overall our costs were down 3%. So let's take a peek at what the drivers were and why our portfolio costs only went up 1%. So the total net of all this is a change in portfolio costs of 1%. And typically there's two themes associated with what makes our costs go up. The first is asset growth. So management fees are tied to the net asset value. Your NAV goes up, management fees go up. And then also just growth in general can have an impact on our operating expenses from a capacity perspective. The second impact or theme to our costs is asset allocation. And that's really how much do we have in private assets. So if you have a higher allocation to private assets, you're going to have higher management fees. You're going to have partnership fees that don't necessarily come along with the public side. And so your costs can go up. Now, we did not change our asset allocation on the private side. We didn't shift it.
Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'll just let Mike go through his comments and then I'll get to the board members. Sorry, Mike.
No worries. So as mentioned, we did not change our asset allocation in 2024 to the private assets. So how we could offset some of that cost increase associated with the asset growth is internal management and the collaborative model. So in 2024, our asset growth was up 9%, but most of this was actually in our internal public equity portfolios that don't have management fees. So that really offset almost 8% of that growth. And that's really where you see that 1% change. What we did see on the private side, though, is even though we didn't change our allocation to private assets, we did see an increase in partnership fees. And that can happen in kind of a dynamic and fluctuating volatile market where you'll see increased due diligence costs associated with the privates. We saw more transaction fees associated with some of our private structures, and that added 2.4% to our portfolio costs. But this was offset by our efforts in the collaborative model. First, we added more co-investment. So co-investment went up, and that doesn't have fees. And then second, we saw fee reductions across other private structures like joint venture and managed accounts. So that combination of negotiation and moving towards more co-investments actually offset the increase we saw in the partnership cost, netting it to zero. So overall, about a 1% increase. And then next, we do actual, besides just tracking costs, we actually work with CM benchmarking to compare how much we spend relative to our global peers and our US public fund average. So in previous years, you've seen our basis point costs go up as we started to allocate more to private assets, and that's been the theme for the past few years. Hey, expect costs to go up, but there's a good model with the private assets, a good risk return model. In 2024, we kept our allocation the same, but our actual percentage of private assets for the total fund went down. And that's because the percentage of public assets relative to the public equity market went up so much that it's just a smaller piece of the pie. So that impact and the fact that the public equity assets are generally internally managed and don't have that much of a cost relative, they don't have management fees, it actually drove our cost basis way down for the year, and it brought us well below the US public fund average and the global peers average at 43.8 basis points. But it wasn't just the public equity impact. We also talked about the collaborative efforts and how private fees went down. So when we adjust our peers' asset allocation to line up with ours, meaning that we give them the same percentage of private equity, same percentage of real estate, and then we use their cost basis, we create a benchmark that we can compare our costs to. And when we do that, we see that we save $650 million relative to what the other plans would have spent, which we've been doing this 8, 9, 10 years at this point. It's the largest I've ever seen. So a big shift this year. Really, definitely a good year for cost savings, but also a good year for returns. And so I'm going to pass it over to Shafat to talk about the return impact.
Before you go, Shafat, we're going to go to Steve to see if he has a question for Mike. Steve?
Scott, and I'm so glad to hear it, that when we calculate cost savings, in particular associated with the collaborative approach, that we're depending on third parties. We're not just doing that estimate ourselves, which is always raises a concern when you have that report come back. You want to make sure that there's somebody else verifying or in fact producing that number. And so I commend staff and for getting us that type of verification. It gives us comfort that those numbers just aren't out pie in the sky, that they actually have been confirmed by third parties who are in the business of doing such a review. So I commend staff for that. One question that we got from Akita on our list, which I think is worth discussing at some point, if not now, about the collaborative model, is we love it. I've been a supporter since 2017 when I was on this board before, pushing that we go in that direction where we were using staff to do more of those investments. But it does raise the question, which I think is shared, and I've heard it from other places, what are the inherent risks in having staff doing those things versus relying on the private sector to do those things? So I don't know if it's worth having that discussion now. Or
I think Scott wants to weigh in. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I'll just weigh in quickly. It's a broader topic, and we can go into more detail, but I would say that there are two primary risks. One is operational, right? So if we're trading on our own, we take on those risks, right? And we spent a lot of time as we were building the collaborative model to make sure we had the appropriate resourcing, not only for the investment team, but for the entire organization to coordinate so we could be nimble and move like that. The second element for us is the selection of what should we bring in-house and what should we continue to pay for, because the objective is not to be penny wise, pound foolish, but to create higher returns. If we take it in, we have to beat what we think we could do externally. And I think we've done a nice job of that if you looked at how we've been able to produce value above our benchmarks in aggregate. And we track, of course, things like, did our co-investment portfolio do better than our fund investment portfolio? It has historically. Those are indicators of that. Anyways, it's something, though, that's an ongoing topic. These I would identify as the two major risks, though.
Thank you, Scott. And again, I commend staff for the work they've done on the collaborative model and the cost savings associated with it.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Appreciate you asking the question. Scott, maybe we should, if it's okay with the committee, as an information request, you and I can chat about possibly bringing back in closed session specific examples of co-investments, the collaborative model, specific investments that we've engaged in, what the value add has been, and what, if anything, from a policy perspective, we can potentially consider amending so that we continue to have some sort of edge going forward, given that so many institutional investors are looking to do exactly what we're doing. And in the cost report, there's so many important aspects of co-investment that touches this organization that it might be worth us having a little bit better understanding of how the team is executed and how the team is thinking about it on a forward-looking basis for a closed session. Okay, Shafat, you're up.
All right, I think this is a good segue into just looking at returns really quick. And hopefully I can leave you with some examples on some of the topics that just came up. So Mike mentioned earlier, the year returned 7.7% for the fund, which equates to about $25 billion brought back into the fund for 2024. Now, we also have a positive return story compared to our peers. So according to CEM benchmarking, what you have on the screen, over the last 3 years, we were at the 100th percentile when it came to our returns, which means that we were the top performer compared to our global peers. Over the 4 and 5 years, we were at 92 percentile, still quite high. Now, when we try to understand what resulted or what caused these type of results for us, in addition to staff not just being able to negotiate better rates, better fees, we're also investing in structures that have not compromised quality, like April had mentioned. I just want to leave you with some very high-level examples. Over the last 5 years, collaborative investments within private equity and inflation-sensitive have outperformed by over 300 basis points compared to their fund counterparts. Over the 5 years as well, the PE co-investment portfolio, which is a very small part of the total fund, has added $6 billion to the fund. So these are just some very high-level examples that I'm sure we'll be talking more in details and at a later time in closed session. Another way to look at the cost return ratio equation is through the capture ratio. What this does is it tells you how much of the gross returns we kept. So basically, if for every dollar in profit we earned, we kept 92 cents after paying investment managers and carried interest. So 92 cents came back into the fund. Now, if you look at the red dotted red line at the top, that is the average capture ratio for public assets. Generally, these are low-cost strategies, so they have a higher capture ratio. The lower dotted line represents the average for the private markets. By design, these are more costly, but they make up for that within their expected returns and diversification benefits. And finally, looking at the savings for 2024, and these are basically the savings coming from the collaborative strategies that we have outlined in the past. So in 2024, the savings generated from not paying management fees and not paying carried interest was $552 million. A lot of that is attributable to also to internal management. But if you recall, Mike had mentioned that carried interest dropped by 14% for the year. And that wasn't necessarily because we didn't lock in fees in private markets. A lot of that had to do with not paying carried interest. So if you see that purple bar, that's the savings from not paying carry for the year. Again, a lot of the savings are also coming from internal management. Over the year, 80% of global equity and 91% of fixed income were managed internally.
Could You say it once again, please, Shafat.
80%, roughly about 80% of the global equity portfolio and 90% of the fixed income portfolio for that year were managed internally. Now, I know we gave you a lot of stats in this presentation, and if there were 3 takeaways that I can highlight for you, number 1 would be that costs are being managed effectively, as seen by the very first chart, that costs are kind of balanced in that trend. The second takeaway would be that effective cost management has not compromised returns or quality, as seen by the peer comparison of returns and capture ratio. And thirdly, effective cost management has resulted in billions of dollars saved over the last 8 years, as seen by this chart here. I also want to kind of conclude with another note saying that the ultimate measure of success is net returns. And the way we measure and look at that measure of success is through multiple lenses. And that's why we look at costs, we look at returns, we look at it on a relative and absolute basis against our own trend analysis, against peers and against benchmarks, so that we can, better understand these drivers of returns and so that we may be able to sustain them into the future.
Thank you so much, Shafat, Mike, April. I think we have a couple of questions, but before we do, Mika, anything you want to add?
Thank you. Mika Malone with Makita for the record. The only thing that I would add, and maybe it's just highlighting what Shafat and team have already brought up, but to me, when you're looking at cost savings, you want to make sure, 1, you're meeting your performance objectives, your ability to pay member benefits over time, which you are clearly doing through all of the other reporting that's provided. And then you want to see where your staff and team are focusing their efforts internally, and are you getting the results you want for that? And so what I think the cost report really clearly highlights is the efforts on the collaborative model, the efforts in internally managing assets where the expectation of external management wasn't that it could add value at a lower cost, has really resulted in that strong, to see NAV go up by 9% and costs up either by 1 or -3, depending on the metric you're using, to me is a really nice proof statement. And I just appreciate the good work that goes into, I think, everyone being held accountable to look at these numbers year over year.
So thank you, Mika. Steve?
If we ever paid carried interest on externally managed investments that lose money, they're exiting, but they're exiting with a loss to the fund.
So the whole point of carry is a profit sharing component.
Right.
So it's only when you're realizing a gain on the investment do you share some of that gain. So there could be, I guess, tranches that we could get out of in certain periods where you may pay when it was making some money and then later on there was a loss and it sold out at a loss. And so net, you could see that difference. But at the time they realize the gain, they sell off part of the assets. You have to be realizing the gain
You have to pay out the carried interest. We're still but on losses, we will pay fees that we would have.
Still pay management fees, yes.
Okay.
Sharon?
My mic. Oh, there we go. Shafat, thanks, and team, thanks for the information. You were talking about global equity, fixed income, 80 and 90% internally managed. And I just wondered about, obviously, thinking about the rest of our portfolio. And can you just maybe talk a little bit about risks of more of those assets being more internally managed, and how would staff think about that? I mean, there are more cost savings if we had, more of our portfolio internally managed. How do you think about that?
So I think, Scott probably touched on that a little bit earlier, but if I were to sum it down to 2 components of the risks of, internal management, things to consider would be, one would be the operational infrastructure of being able to support these type of internal strategies. So having the operational support, the compliance, and the admin support to be able to sustain these type of vehicles. And the second one would be staffing, making sure we have the right and appropriate staff and hiring and retention strategies to support that.
Scott?
Yeah, I wanted to broaden the viewpoint a little bit. Today, I know that we're talking about costs in the cost report, But remember, the collaborative model were 3 legs of the stool. One was to increase our returns. Secondly was to reduce costs and fees. And the third was to control risk. And so if we think about those two other elements, how do we boost our returns? One of the things that I think has been greater than we expected was the amount of collaboration we have now with our partners and the expertise that's being developed by staff. We're better able to source the right transactions. And so I think that's one of the reasons why you're seeing returns that are much higher in and above the cost savings. We also have ownership of many of these managers as well. We're earning economic interest alongside them as well. And on the other end, and particularly now I'm talking to the team about this as we enter the mid or later stage of a cycle, we have to control our risks, right? And so if we have flexible structures where we could stop investing at the peak of a cycle or when terms change, like we just discussed, that gives us a lot more control. So I just want to make sure that you understand the fuller picture. We're just talking about one segment of this, but it's really a holistic viewpoint of how we implement, how we invest at CalSTRS.
Thank you, Scott. Michelle.
I'm not sure if I did that right. Push the button correctly.
Perfect, just the way
But I turned green, so hey. Okay, my mic turned green. Real quick, appreciate the information on the savings, particularly over the total 8 years of savings, which is quite a significant number. Does that take into consideration or the offset of costs for the increase in staff? Because I know we obviously increased, I think it was like 53 million-ish. Does that already consider that, or would we take that off the top, I guess?
In the calculation itself, it's not actually accounting for that, but the number is so small relative to it that it wouldn't change the percentages.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
A really good question. I hadn't thought of that, but it's de minimis, but I hadn't thought of, yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, no, of course. Yeah. So I believe in energy. There's a lot of energy in this room earlier. There should be the amount of energy that I feel around this report. I mean, this is something we should all be really proud of. A lot of work. People have been intentional, and we've been measuring this for 10 years. It should be called the Paul Rosensteel report because he's the one that requested it. And at the time, there was a lot of resistance, which is a good lesson for me. Sometimes when there's resistance, maybe that's when I should be a little bit more open-minded. This is a terrific report. Congratulate everyone on it. And I know the team is continuing to think about how we can continue to capture more, reduce our fees without giving up quality, whether it's in public equities, fixed income, or structures and our scale to our advantage. Because I think as we think about the future, there's so much capital in the world. The advantages we had a few years ago maybe aren't as significant as they once were. So how we govern ourselves, how we think about structures, how we think about partnerships, and how we think about scale to ensure that there's a pure alignment of interest between this fund and the ultimate beneficiaries. It's something I know we're all thinking about. What I'm very proud of about this report, not only is it dollars that are coming back that are invested back into the fund to pay benefits, but it also contributes to our funding ratio, which is moving to the upper right-hand quadrant. And this is a contributing factor to that. So for all those of you that have made this possible, thank you. Continue the good work. We look forward to the report next year. Thanks so much. Okay, so item 5 is the consent, action, and information. Steve, help us out. Do we have to take a vote on any of this? Just we receive it as, okay, thanks. So that's, and then item 6 is the approval of the minutes from open session without, I believe Karen does have some amendments or some corrections. Karen, from the minutes.
Inserted in time. Item 6, page 2 of the minutes. There's one staff member that's listed twice. Rosie Lucasini Jack is listed twice, so if you can just delete one of those entrants. And then on page 3, there's a Roman 3. It talks about the Chief Investment Officer report, but it needs to say Investment Officer, okay, rather than Executive Officer.
Thanks, Karen.
We'll make those, and thank you for always driving us towards excellence. That's why we love teachers. Thank you.
We love our attorneys, too. A lot of love in the room.
I'm putting that in my diary.
Anyway. Steve, information requests?
We do. We had one on the last item for a closed session, a future item in closed session that shares examples of specific collaborative strategy investments where there have been, value added to the fund, and so also for the community to understand staff's framework, and then whether there's a potential for, adjusting those strategies in the future.
Thanks, Steve. Anything else that? I don't think so. Okay. Scott, you want to highlight anything from the draft agenda for the next meeting? Okay. So looking at the schedule and the time, Scott, what do you think about doing your CIO report, closed session? Go ahead.
I think for that, what I would recommend in the essence of time, that I fold any of those comments into the semi-annual with all the questions that we're answering. I think it's going to be covered in the semi-annual closed session, so we can forgo that.
Okay. We have an hour scheduled for lunch. 2 questions for the committee. One would be, do you want to break for lunch now? Or would you prefer to go for about 30 minutes and then break for lunch at about 12:30? Go for 30 minutes? Okay. All right, so we're going to continue for about 30 minutes, so we need to move into closed session. So only those people that are appropriate to have in closed session, please. And while the room is emptying out, why don't we take a 5-minute break? Bathroom break.